So now we're going to talk about the fun stuff like finding an agency. What is an agency? Do you need an agency? Now these are all really good questions. So let's start out with what is an agency? What does it do? Who is an agent to you? Now agencies essentially are your go-to to finding your jobs. So your agent's going to be that person that looks for the work for you. They're not only going to look for that work for you, but they're also going to negotiate for you. They're going to get your money for you. These are really important people to have in your life if you want to be a working model. Now let's start with how do you find one? Okay, well there are lots of different ways to go about it. First of all, you can look locally in your market. A really good way to do this is to just simply do an internet search. So you're going to get on Google, you're going to get on Yahoo, and you're going to Google local talent or local modeling agencies and see what you come up with. Go to their websites. It's really important that you go and you look through who it is that they already represent. Do they represent people that look like you? Do they represent someone with a really similar look? If that's the case, they might not necessarily be interested in you, only because they already have someone with your type. But that's not to say that they won't want you. So it's always a good idea to see and try out for whoever, as long as you feel like it's a good match overall for you. So you look at your look. Do they have, say, a plus division if you feel like you're plus size? Do they have an older set if you feel like you're older? A lot of the times they will have different age groupings. They will have a lifestyle division. They'll have a fashion division. Which one do you feel like you fit into? If they have a division in which you can see yourself, then you should absolutely submit. Now, there are different ways that you can do that, and you always want to kind of go with the guidelines on their website. So some of the time they will want to do it strictly online, and they'll have instructions on how to do that. So a lot of times it'll be they want some digitals, whether it's just a face. Sometimes they want a profile. Sometimes it's 3/4 and as well as a full. They'll specify how they want you to dress. Usually it's just form-fitting clothing. Sometimes they'll ask for you in a swimsuit because they want to see your body overall. So just go by their guidelines. Try to stick to them as closely as possible. They always want a little to no makeup because they want to see what you really look like. I know a lot of times, especially when you're first getting into it, you feel like you have to be made up. You have to look your absolute best, how you feel. But the agency really just wants to see you. They are looking for something completely different than what you think they're looking for. So you always want to keep that in mind. You are not an agent. You're only going essentially by what it is that you think that they need, but they know what they need. And to stick closely to what their submission policies are, that's probably the best way to go. A lot of times also they'll want snail mail submissions, in which case you'll have to actually physically mail in some images. Now that's not so typical these days, especially since everything is so digital, but just bear that in mind. Some of the older, more established agencies might ask for you to send in pictures. Another way to go about it is to go to an open call. Now some agencies hold open calls. Could be a couple hours once a week or twice a week. You want to see on their website, they'll list when their open calls are, and they'll want you to come and bring your pictures with you. That way they can see you face to face. They can get a good look at you. They can take their own pictures right then and there for reference, just because a lot of times, like we touched on earlier, people have a tendency to fudge their measurements. They don't use the most updated images, things like that. So this way, at least when you go in for an open call, the agents can look at you right then and there. They know exactly what you look like, exactly what your measurements are, because they'll take them. They'll take digitals right then and there so that they have those immediate references and they can decide whether or not you're a good fit for them. Now, if you're fortunate enough to sign with an agency that's local, or even if you're in with one that's a little bit bigger, the actual job of your agent, they have many jobs for you, but remember, they're always working for you. You don't work for your agent. That's something that I think a lot of people get confused with. that your agency is not to make any money off of you unless you're working. So you would never pay an agency. You would never pay to be with an agency. You would never pay an agency to have your photos taken. The only thing that you might have an expense for is if you're on their website. And if that's the case, then they would pull that fee from your first job. You are not ever to hand an agency money. That's something so important that I cannot emphasize enough. A lot of people get sucked into these agents that require $1,500 up front to put their portfolios together and this, that, and the other. And that's not at all the way that it happens. So you want to make sure that whatever agency it is that you are looking into is a legitimate agency. Go and look at reviews. Talk to other models that are signed with them. You want to know exactly what you're dealing with because there are a lot of scams. And it's so important in this business to make sure that you are working with people that are legitimate. So that being said, when you sign with an agency, their job is to find you work. That's it. That is their job. So when they find you a casting, they will let you know, we need you to go to this casting on this day. It's for this, it pays this much. And you would go to that casting, which is essentially an audition. So you would go, the client would look you over, and they would decide whether or not they want to actually hire you for the job. Now, say you get hired. Your agency then takes a percentage of the money that you are being paid to do this job. Now, standard for a print modeling job through an agency is 20%. So your agency would take 20% off of whatever it is that you're getting paid. So you would never actually see that 20%. Your agency would take that fee from the client as they pay through your agent, and then when you get your check, you get the amount that you were booked for less that 20% that your agency keeps. So the only time they ever make money off of you is when they book you work, which is motivation for them to find you work, right? Exactly. So the more the agency keeps you working, the more they make money, the more you make money. It's a great symbiotic relationship in that aspect. Now, they also do things like negotiate for you when it comes to jobs. So a lot of times this is done beforehand. Like I said, they will give you a casting. The fee is already negotiated. So they'll let you know, okay, this is the job. It pays this much minus our 20%, and that's that. Sometimes, though, it'll be a little bit of back and forth. Maybe it's a larger job. In that case, your agent will go back and forth negotiating your fee with whoever it is that wants to hire you. This is great because that means that you are not actually involved in any of that aspect of the business. So you can just concentrate on doing your job, which is being a model. You show up, you're there to sell a product. You don't have to worry about how is this going to work as far as payment goes. Am I getting paid for this? Am I getting paid? You don't have to worry about any of that. The agency takes care of all of that for you. Now, do you need an agent? Absolutely, I would encourage you to find an agent, only because there are so many situations out there where you could get caught not having a go-between, not having someone there on your team, which could translate to not getting paid, which could translate to poor working conditions, which could translate to somebody using your image without permission for things that you were not intending that job to be for. I mean, if you could show up to a shoot that you booked through yourself, you don't know ultimately who it is that you're working for sometimes. You could be walking into a situation that could be dangerous. You could walk into a situation that could be that could ultimately shed you in a negative light, where your images end up someplace where you don't deem appropriate or used to their advantage, and you're not getting paid for the usage of your images. You want to avoid all of that, and having the agency is going to do that for you. They are there for your protection as well as, helping you find your jobs. So to me, having an agent is always beneficial. And starting out small in your local area is always a good idea. That would be considered your mother agency. They're the ones that are really going to help mold you. They're the ones that are going to help sort of build your portfolio. They will guide you a little bit to help maximize your potential as a model and whatever aspect of it is that you are ultimately trying to get to. So now when you're starting with a smaller agency, if you have that potential to be that editorial fashion model, to be that high-end fashion model walking the runways of Fashion Week, they might place you with a larger agency. Now these are the big agencies that you see in New York, LA, Miami, London, Paris. These are the bigger agencies that are going to really catapult you into that editorial market if that is where you are headed. Now these agencies are a little bit bigger. They're going to have more people to choose from, which could be detrimental in certain ways. Yes, they might have the larger clients. Yes, they might have a larger brand base, but they're also going to have more models to choose from. And that could ultimately get you lost in the shuffle. So you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at the larger agencies like Elite, like Ford, like Next. They have those big brand faces. They have those girls that are established and that are always going to sort of get more of the attention, I guess, so to speak. So unless it's something a little bit smaller, a little bit more specific, you might get lost along with the rest of the girls if you're not on a certain level as far as that goes. But at the same time, they could also help get you to places like Paris, to places like London, to get into those fashion shows in New York Fashion Week. If that's ultimately where you want to go, then that is a great way for you to try to steer your career. Or if you're really into the swim, you're into the fitness, there's some other really great markets, maybe down in South Florida, maybe out in LA, that are really cater to more of that style. And if you are, say, somewhere in the Midwest and you have an agency there and they can place you with one of these larger agencies, then that is absolutely the way you want to go. They can really help you get your foot in the door as far as larger markets. And the larger the market, the more really the more opportunity you're going to have as a model. But again, for all the opportunity, there's also going to be more competition. And you have to keep that in mind. The competition is going to get a little harder, a little tougher when you're in those larger markets. And that's something else that we're going to touch upon a little later, is having that thick skin and making sure that you have that confidence, because along with that also comes a lot of rejection. And that's something that you'll have to really learn to deal with going forward when you're going to castings, when you're going on auditions and you're not chosen. You have to be able to brush it off and keep moving forward, because you don't want to get discouraged. It's all just part of the business.